Hey, Abigail. Thanks so much for joining us. You are a worship leader by trade, and I know you have a few other things that you're doing, but I would love for you just to tell us a little bit more about yourself, and we can,
Yeah, thanks for
get
having
this thing
me,
going.
Aaron. Uh, I am so excited to be here. Yeah, I have been leading worship for over 15 years, maybe 16, maybe 18. Time eludes me, but I've been leading worship for a long time. I started like probably many people did when I was in the high school band, and I had a good friend of
Hmm.
mine, Rollin Williamson, who kind of really fanned the flame of the worship leading career for
Okay.
me. And I've been leading at North Point, which is how you and I know each other, obviously,
Right.
for
Right.
about 13 years, 13 or 14, maybe coming
Oh,
up on
wow.
14. Yeah. So for a long time, as a job, for a long time as a volunteer, I'm a
Hmm.
Baptist pastor's kid. So I
Sure.
kind of grew up
Yeah.
making the church services happen with my family. But it became a quote unquote job about 14 years
Mm.
ago.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, we met like 7 years ago now. You a
Mhm.
worship leader, me new into the level of production that North Point is.
Mm.
And I would really love to just dive into sort of like how has been your experience on stage with
Mhm.
so many people, like people like me, like our some of our service programming directors,
Mm.
scrutinizing like every little thing that you do. And has has there been, ebbs and flows to that? Are
Yes,
we in an ebb? Are we in a flow? Like how's that experience for you right now?
that's such a fun question, Aaron. It's a great question, in my opinion, because yeah, it is hard. It has been hard at times, feeling like as a worship leader, I've been under a microscope,
Mhm.
and sometimes a microscope with a scalpel behind it, And when I first started singing at North Point, it was something I really wanted to do because I really admired the quality of the production, not for the
Mm,
sake of the production itself, but because
mhm,
I felt that it was a non-distracting environment where people could come to church and pray and sing and encounter God without feeling uncomfortable or
mhm.
maybe, oh, if the transitions are bad, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling awkward when I show up to an event and
Oh yeah.
transitions are bad, or
Oh
if
yeah.
it's not, everybody messes up sometimes. I
Sure.
myself mess
Yeah.
up every time I walk on the stage. But I was really drawn to North Point's um, level of dedication to excellence for the sake of reaching the unbeliever or the
Mm,
unchurched person, as
okay.
well as the person who is. So I understood coming into it that the high level of excellence was not to harm me, but
Mm,
to protect something in the service and to help elevate my work. It did come with a
mm.
set of challenges. Back when I started leading at North Point, some of us who lead around there will giggle about this. We used to record rehearsal, which we still do, but we would
Right.
have to
Yeah.
wait at the end because it would be burned on a CD. So
Oh
the
wow.
rehearsal would be burned on a CD, and we would drive home and put that CD into our CD player in the
Uh-huh.
car
Yep.
and
Yep.
listen back. And what a lot of people who don't sing on stage, maybe with in-ear monitors or with the opportunity to hear a playback that's unedited, is that
Mm,
you might be a solid singer who has great pitch, but there are times where you think you hear something that you don't hear. And sometimes when you get that CD, you're like, wow, I was really pitchy in that section.
mm,
And I have no idea how that happened. And for me, a lot of the microscope involved being willing to listen to myself in a very microscopic level. The house,
okay.
where the congregation or the audience is sitting,
Yeah.
whatever word you want to use, where they're sitting, it's much more forgiving. You've got a
Very.
lot of
Yes.
great, beautiful things happening from these professional sound mixers. But back when we were getting sent home with these CDs, there was no tampering, no help,
Mm-mm.
no reverb, nothing. So
Yeah.
you're
Super
just
dry,
hearing,
straight to a CD. Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
right. So you're
Yeah.
just hearing you and yourself out there. And it was very humbling. It was humbling.
Mm,
But
okay.
it was a good experience because it helped me to grow as a worship leader, because I became more dedicated to understanding what my craft was and how to hone that stuff in. Um,
Hmm.
I will say I had Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say how do you or how have you figured out the balance between listening to that dry mix sounding, I mean, I would imagine it's very vulnerable.
Oh, very. I
You
mean,
know,
I would
you're
call it
listening to
trash,
it.
Aaron. When I listen to it, I call it trash. Like
um
nobody's harder on anybody themselves than themselves.
so you're listening to that dry mix, and then where's that balance between that dry mix and then what you know that the audience is going to experience, because it's two very different things.
Yeah.
So do you really scrutinize that dry mix to death,
Mm.
or do you give yourself grace, or is that a learning process? Do you have to learn to give yourself grace?
That's a great question. Let me take that back. I'm assuming for every worship leader, there's a different path. But for
Mm,
me, it was
mm,
kind of all of those things. I've had seasons where I've
okay,
been like, I'm trash. This is terrible. I can't believe anybody would pay me to do this. Then I've
sure.
had seasons where I'm like, I'm going to put this to the side. I'm actually not going to listen to the playback. There was a season where I
Mm,
refused to listen to playback, not
mm-hmm,
because I was trying in any way to be unprofessional, but I knew
yeah,
it was distracting me to the point where I'm
okay,
overly hyper focused on this. And now I'm in my head so much that
mm-hmm,
I was becoming paralyzed. And so I
mm,
took a season
okay,
off from listening. Then I started listening again and started being gentler with myself, kinder to
yeah,
myself. Because
yeah,
during that time, the people on the other side of me in the room, the SPD directors, production, they were giving me feedback that said, wow, that sounds great. It feels full in the
mm-hmm,
house. So I was thankfully hearing other people who were out in the house who were contradicting the dry mix that I heard. And the great news is, I know you
okay,
know, what I'm hearing in my in ears is not the same as what I was hearing on that CD. You know what I mean? So the
yeah, yeah,
good news
yes,
is that
yes.
what I was hearing in my ears live was at least still a loving and forgiving mix, because I made it with the monitor person.
Right,
Like
right,
I
right, right,
curated
right.
it to my
Yeah,
hopes and dreams.
right.
So thankfully that also helps.
Okay.
But there are just times where I've had to put that to the side. There were
Mm,
times where it was oppressive to me to listen to playback, and time where
mm,
it was helpful. And what my experience was that working through that self-doubt, and even honestly for me at times shame, because as a performer, sometimes for me it's hard not to equate my performance with if I'm a
shame.
worthy person or not. Sometimes
Really
I feel
interesting.
ashamed if I feel like
Yeah,
I didn't do a good job.
yeah.
But through that journey of, okay, I'm listening, this is awful, to, okay, I'm not going to listen, I'm going to be myself, to, okay,
Mm,
now I'm more comfortable with who I am. I've had helpful feedback from the people on the other side of me. I'm going to take a
okay.
listen again, and I'm going to just continue to hone. And I would just hone in on it perhaps during the week. And then I would put it to the side and say,
Mm,
okay, I'm going to fix my breath support here. I'm going to focus here. I'm going to turn the keys up. So I tend to take
mm,
my pitch reference off of the keys. Growing up, it was the acoustic guitar for me, but now it's the keys for me, because
okay.
acoustics, as we know, can get out of tune. And that keyboard ain't going nowhere.
No.
So if I need to crank it up, now I use it as helpful feedback. What used to feel like
Mm,
condemnation now for me is just information. It no
okay.
longer dictates to me my
Yeah.
worth. I know that I'm not a perfect singer. I know I do a great job. I know
Mm-hmm.
now from hearing, you know, the most famous singers in the world, if you can hear their mixes sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
what they're hearing in their
Right,
in-ears,
right, right,
it also sounds like trash 9 times out of 10. So that took a lot of pressure off my shoulder as more information was being shared
right.
about that. So
Yeah. That's awesome. That's super helpful. And I know that, production guys do the same thing. Like you miss a cue or whatever, you're like, ah, I'm so bad at running lights.
right,
I'm terrible. But
right.
it's like you missed a downbeat. It's fine. There's gonna be another one coming up.
That's right. Just get on the next one.
Just yeah, just get on to the next one.
That's right.
Um, one thing that I find interesting from sitting back and watching, because that mostly is my job. If everything
Mm,
is running smoothly,
right.
I'm very much an observer in the control rooms.
Mm,
And so I like it when I'm an observer.
of course. Yeah,
Of
that's a
course,
good
right,
day.
right.
Right.
um, and also being involved in all the programming meetings and stuff like that, and then
Mm,
feedback meetings and stuff like that. I know that there's been major conversations on like prayer moments
mm,
and wrapping up a worship set or
yeah.
starting a worship set. Hey, are we gonna welcome the crowd in these first 4 bars of the song? He did it great, but she didn't.
Right.
Like, how
Right.
how is how is that? How is getting that kind of feedback? And are there better ways to do it than maybe you've received?
I've received from several different campuses different types of feedback. Every campus,
Mhm.
as we know, has their own SPD director, and there are
Right.
different people who give feedback. And some people are better at giving helpful feedback, and
Hmm.
some people it comes out as a criticism. Um,
Mm.
so for me, there's also been a journey with that.
Okay.
At first, getting those notes felt like death because I was afraid I was going to lose my job. Now, I want to
Oh,
be
interesting.
clear. I want to be clear. Nobody was telling me if you don't do this perfectly, you will lose your job. And in fact, I
Sure.
worked with some of the most wonderful, gracious, generous people on the planet. I mean, truly,
Hmm.
I did. I was just so afraid because the quality of excellence was so high. Excuse
Hmm.
me, the level of excellence was so high that I was afraid if I wasn't perfect every time, they
Hmm.
might realize that, uh-oh, she's just a fraud. I
Mm.
definitely think
Hmm.
most performers, not all, but many of us suffer from that imposter syndrome. And
Hmm.
so I never
Hmm.
felt like I belonged anyway. I kept thinking they're going to figure out any day
Oh,
now that I
interesting.
am absolutely terrible at this and
No,
they're not going to
no.
call me back. It makes me laugh now
Yeah,
in a healthy way, but I mean, this was a very real fear for many
sure.
years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Once again, I was surrounded by loving people, but that's just kind of sometimes the nature of working in a high excellence
Mm.
environment is
Hmm.
that we all want to, we all want to live up to it.
Sure.
So the feedback can be challenging. I started when women did not give as much feedback on stage, or I should
Okay.
say
All
setups. We
right.
didn't set up as much. We didn't set up the moments quite as much as men did. Usually there were two males and one female, or
Mm.
one male and two females, but we weren't going to have
Okay.
as many songs to lead. We didn't necessarily have, my experience, as
Hmm.
many vision moments or, prayer up ups. I felt like I was given way more opportunity than I ever had been in the
Okay.
past,
All right.
but it still wasn't to me what it is now. Now I could be on stage with just female leads. That never happened for me 12, 13
Mm.
years ago. That wasn't a thing.
Okay.
So sometimes my experience was that I would notice that men were given more opportunities to mess up than women. And I don't think that was
Oh, interesting.
intentional. I do not. I want to very
Okay.
clearly
Yeah,
say
that was
that, but
my next question.
yeah,
Right.
I really think it was just one of those. Here's the thing, Aaron. We had boundaries, right? So like um most of the leadership in the campuses that I were at were male leaders. So they could take the other male worship leaders to lunch or to
Hmm.
coffee, and they're
Right.
mentoring them and they're walking them
Right.
through. Here's how you think through a setup. Here's how you think through
Mm.
this vision moment. And they're
Yeah.
giving them all this private coaching that is appropriate from male to male. But like,
Hmm.
I am a single female, and I'm
Hmm.
coming in and there's all
Hmm.
these married men around, and we could get together at the church or in certain environments, but there was just what felt like a lot of barriers to getting helpful coaching. And for a while,
Mm.
it was just tricky because we didn't have a, a lot of women who were giving us coaching on things like that specifically, like setting up a
Mm.
vision moment. So for me, and again, this is just my experience. I'm not speaking
Okay.
for everyone. Other people may have had a very different experience.
Okay.
But my experience was that I was terrified when I was given those moments because I thought, I really hope I don't screw this up because they may not ask me again for a long time. And that was my
Mm.
experience. If I did something and it was shaky or
Right.
rocky, I probably was not going to get asked again for 6 months to maybe even a year.
Wow. Okay.
And nerves, no, not many people perform at their best under pressure. Some do,
Hmm.
not many
Sure.
do. And so, often I would see that it wasn't that people weren't capable of doing well. It was just we needed more reps. We needed to put in more reps. And
Okay.
so
All right.
that feedback that you were asking about in your original question of, okay, maybe this person did it well, but maybe not this person. And how does that
Hmm.
feel? It was tricky at times. Sometimes it
Mm.
felt a little bit like, walking on eggshells and trying to figure it out. And everybody
Yeah.
was trying to root for everybody. I really feel like
Okay.
we were all being given opportunity, but some of it just by the nature of the demographic back then was just going to naturally lean in one way. Whereas now,
Sure.
like I said, there are women everywhere where
Oh
I work,
yeah.
and most of my feedback is from women these days. And
Okay. Yeah.
so I mean, it's a little different than when I started 14 years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Um, when when you're given those moments, um I don't know, we'll skip that. I don't know where I was going with that, but
That's fine.
yeah, um that's fantastic. Oh, I knew what I was going to say. I
Hmm.
was going to ask, like, so, like, I know you and I know at North Point, people probably listening to this probably aren't familiar with North Point.
Sure.
Um, do you find that when you're at another church, do you find that to be very similar in that getting feedback or getting those prayer moments or things like that? Or is it because I mean, North Point does things very specifically because of
Right.
how we decided to do church, but
Hmm.
other churches are more willing to have a longer prayer or a
Sure. Right.
longer vision and stuff
Mm.
like that.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, that's a great question because something people who may not be in the circle of North Point may not know is that
Hmm.
most of our setups and prayers and stuff do have a clock. Now, there was a
Hmm.
time where it was like you literally have 1 minute and 10 seconds. Do
Oh
not go
yeah.
a second over. And I used to, baby, write them down, practice it out. I mean, I had that sucker memorized. I was
Uh-huh.
terrified. And I want to say I was very encouraged when those. I remember Todd Fields used to work there, and Todd encouraged me a lot. I've had a lot of I realized that what I said earlier may sound like it was male to female negative, but I had a lot of
Mm.
male encouragement. It's just that I wasn't able to get in the same reps of coaching,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
as
just
many
want to clarify that.
times.
Yeah,
Right.
that's really it. But I had a lot of encouragers like Todd Fields or Eddie
Hmm.
Kirkland or Reed
Hmm.
Grevin. I mean, all of
Yeah.
these people who were telling me you can do it, but it was like little snippets here and there instead of sitting
Right.
down and working through the process. So those time clocks and stuff were terrifying to me.
Oh
And
yeah.
but I am a performer. I'm also an actor and a speaker. And so for me, that
Hmm.
wasn't too foreign. Whereas I have a lot of other musician friends who that was a very foreign idea. So the idea of
Mm.
wrapping all of this up felt fine. Putting a bow on it was fine, but now 70 seconds? I don't
Hmm.
know about that. That was
Hmm.
challenging.
Yeah.
So, my experience was largely at North Point because that's mostly where I am. I've been there at North Point or a surrounding campus almost every single Sunday for the last, 13, 14
Hmm.
years. Now, when
Yeah.
I've gone to other churches around, I've had really great experiences, but most of them have been very similar to how North Point is run. Some of them are
Okay.
more lenient, which is great. I love going somewhere where they're like, you do you, like, great, I got 8 days. I usually don't take it all 8 days, but it can feel nice to do that. But I appreciate what North Point is trying to do, and I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with it, if that makes sense. My
Sure. Yeah.
attitude in the
Yeah.
approach was you serve the place that you're at. So when I'm at North
Okay.
Point and the leadership and the vision that I know is crafted, I've said yes to. And so
Hmm.
they're asking me to do this task. And so I would approach it with, I said yes to this. I agreed to it. So I'm going to come under and support their vision. This is
Mm.
not the Abigail show. It's not Abigail's vision.
Mm.
And so, how do I say if I feel like God's put something on my heart to say, what I need to say in a way that's honoring to the place that's asked me? And on a rare
Mm.
occasion, I have felt very rare. I have felt like it's not possible in these parameters for me to say what I feel,
Hmm.
moved to say. So I'm actually just going to ask, hey, could somebody else do
Mm.
it? That's pretty rare for me that happens, but it has
Yeah.
happened a couple of times where I just
Okay.
knew what I have to say won't fit this moment
Mm.
and your needs. And so I'm going to pause and give this, prompt at a different
Okay.
place at a different time. But usually it comes that I can pray through those moments and think, okay, God, what are you putting on my heart? And how do I craft this in a way that's honoring to the place that has asked me to do this moment? And
Mm.
for me, that's the dance I'm working with.
Interesting. That's awesome. No, that's really cool. I'd love to take a little bit of a turn towards a little bit of production.
Totally.
The I would love to hear your feedback on, like, I don't know, monitor engineers or your front of house. Like, those are the two guys that you work with the most.
Mm,
And monitor guys or girls.
sure. No, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Um, Obviously, I'm sure you've had some good ones, some bad ones, and some
Mm,
great ones. Like,
yeah.
what's the difference between, like, the good and great?
Mm.
And then, like, I mean, if you want to throw them under the bus, you can say names.
I
but you
would
don't have
say no
to.
names. I would never do that. That would
But
never
like
do that. Number one.
what's a what's a
What's
good
kind of
example
a
of
marker?
maybe an incident where like they didn't know that it was like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Sure. I actually have one that comes right off the bat. I'll start by saying this. The monitor engineers that I work with right now are all fantastic. My
Cool.
experience now, I will say
That's
that, and I
cool.
can say that truthfully. I have built, and they have built with me, a relationship over years of work where we
Hmm.
know each other. Now, some are more naturally going to be able to give me a mix that I'm looking for right away because they know me. Some
Okay.
people are just, my experience with some monitor engineers is it's intuitive for them. They just walk in, they feel it, they kind of know from a
Hmm.
couple of the things that you say what you're going to look for, and they can just
Really?
nail it. Oh yeah.
Like what kind of stuff?
So
Like
there's one,
that's
I'll say a
interesting.
name, AJ. AJ, I call him FJ as a
Yes.
joke. AJ and I know each other well, and he knows
Yeah.
what kind of mix I like. So
Okay.
I usually don't have to give AJ any notes because the second he
Really?
turns my mix on, he takes a listen and he'll say, "Oh, she's going to want, oh, yeah." And he will literally start mixing.
Mm,
It's very rare that I have a comment for AJ. We know
yeah.
each other. Again, he knows what type of mix I like. Terry
Hmm.
up at Brownsbridge. Shout out Terry is another one of those people who he just knows what kind of mix
Okay.
I like, and he tends to just mix for it. He's just very intuitive.
And
Pat is the same.
how long is that taken? I mean, like,
With AJ, it did not take very long. I don't think it took very long with Terry either. But the time, I've known them all for years now. I just
mhm.
don't know. I
Yeah.
can't remember. But I wanted to start with a very positive thing that I have a lot of
Okay.
wonderful. I could literally name everyone. Now I feel like I need to name every engineer who's mixed for me. And I'm so grateful for what they do because they set me free to
Mm.
lead worship. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
without them,
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
distracted and I'm frustrated and I can't get it.
Mm.
That is
Yeah.
not how I want to spend my time that I feel like God has given me to help lead his
Mm.
people that day. And they are helping lead me by helping me be free. And they're also
Sure.
helping lead his people. So I'm thankful for how we all work together. A negative experience I had was way back in the day when I first started leading at North Point. And some of this has to do with just being new and shy, but
Mm.
there used to be some monitor engineers, and they're not around anymore, who would ignore my requests. So I
Oh.
would say, "Hey, I need more click." And they would take a listen and they'd say, "Oh, okay," but nothing would change. And I would feel a little embarrassed, like, "Oh,
Hmm.
maybe they gave me the change and I just didn't notice it." So I'd raise my hand again and say, "Hey, could I have some more click?"
Yeah.
And then nothing would change. And I'd be embarrassed because you don't want to ask too many times when you're
Right.
the new
Right.
one, that. And
Right.
now I
Right.
don't
Right. Right.
care because I'm too old to care. But like back then, I'm 20 and terrified. And they wouldn't change things on my mix. And I started asking around to a couple other people, and we had similar experiences where they would tell me they had changed something but nothing would change, and then other
Mm.
people would ask and things would change, and it would depend on who asked them. And the attitude behind that was,
Interesting.
"I know better than you do, you just don't know what you're asking," was the attitude that I was met with.
Really?
That would really bother me. That was not often, but there
Sure.
were two or three people that I worked with
Hmm.
initially that were like that. And it was very insulting, especially the older I got and the more
Hmm.
mature I became in it, because I
Yeah.
finally just sat there and be like, "I need more. I need more. It's not changing for me. Hey, I'm so sorry. It's not changing for me." And that's when we finally started seeing some results. And
Mm.
I said, "If you've changed it, it was not clear at all for me. So I think, you know, I'm just going to need a whopping change." And then we could just
Yeah.
go down from there. Some of that was just communication, but some of it was an arrogance. And you
Mm.
know it when you're experiencing it. But it would just be this whole attitude of, "I know better than you." Sometimes I would get my mix locked
Interesting.
in, and then while I was leading, they would change it. And I would go over and ask, "My mix just feels different. Did anything change?" "Well, I was just tweaking it because I figured you might want XYZ." And that would be very bothersome for me because
Sure.
if
Yeah.
I've asked you to tweak it, and sometimes I will, that is wildly helpful.
Yeah.
But if we've spent all this time locking it in and you're making major changes, it just feels very disrespectful to me. I don't
Hmm.
I don't know what qualifies me as having great taste in my
Right.
in ears,
Right.
but this is what I need.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm not here for taste. I'm sure your ear is better than mine.
Right.
I just need more of this and
Right.
less of this.
Yeah, you're
So
not looking for a CD mix in your
I'm
ears.
not. Yeah,
You
no.
are asking for very specific things to help you do what you need to do.
That's right. Now,
Yeah.
in monitor people's defense, sometimes we don't know what we need. Sometimes I'm hearing a lot of treble,
Mm.
like a lot of high pitched
Mm-hmm.
sounds, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, and it just
Yeah.
feels like noise to me. And I might say, hey, maybe I need less electric, maybe I need more of this, but all of a sudden I'm making it messier. In that case, I'll say, hey, I am
Mm-hmm.
making a mess of this. Would you take a listen to this? Here's my big problem.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
noise. I don't know what to do. Can you fix it? That's, you have a great monitor engineer when they go, let me work on that for you. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
fix it. So I'm not saying that's never appropriate. It absolutely is.
But
But
you asked them.
but I asked
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
You
right.
asked them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every
That's
monitor
interesting.
en- every on sorry. Every monitor engineer that I know will go back to your mix and maybe enhance it. And so I'm not saying that that's but like maybe
Mm-hmm.
opening it up with a little bit more effects here and there that they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do in the quick turnaround. But I'm again talking about major changes.
Sure.
Don't do that.
Sure.
Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, like when we first started the conversation, the thing that stuck out to me was the relationship bit.
Yeah.
Like you have a relationship with AJ, you have a relationship with
Terry, Pat, all
Terry,
of these people. Yeah, that's
right?
right.
Um, how important is that to you? Like your reservations just go away when you walk in, you see AJ at the
Oh
monitor
yeah.
console or Terry there. You're just like, all
Yes.
right, I'm good. We're
Yes,
golden.
I am. That's yes, yes,
Yeah.
a resounding yes.
Okay.
But I will say this, it is very problematic to me when you have musicians who do not respect the time and the effort that your monitor person is putting
Mm-hmm.
into giving you a good mix. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there is this
Yeah.
unspoken, like, well, that's the band, that's the quote unquote talent. But if you've ever
Yeah.
witnessed anything that is production, all the grunt work is happening in production. They
Mm-hmm.
are doing all of this hard, backbreaking stuff to get you somewhere. So to not work to have a good relationship with them or to treat them
Mm,
with disrespect or as if they're somehow less than is to me the height of unprofessionalism and the height of disrespect.
mm,
I am thinking they are better than me. Not that it has to be like that, but like I'm thinking you guys are where it's at because without you, I can't be, like I said,
mm-hmm.
undistracted on stage. And so I think it's important for there to be that relationship from the musician side as well as the monitor side.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a
Sure.
safe space for them. I don't want to be somebody that makes them feel embarrassed or called out.
Oh
It's
yeah.
people sometimes forget that when people are doing monitors for you and you keep asking them to fix something on your mix, that can be a little bit uncomfortable because they want to get it right for you. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like they're
Yeah,
trying to get it right for
absolutely.
you. And so if they feel like they can't win or that you're mad at them or impatient, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
that's really going to be a challenge to get what you want and
Yeah.
what you both need. What you both want is for you to have a mix that's
Right.
successful, right? And so
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I think that relationship is important, but it's very important that musicians approach it with gratitude and humility because there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot that goes in to crafting these mixes, a lot more than
Mm-hmm.
we know. So I
Mm,
just think that's vital.
yeah. The relationship part, I think it would can go a long way with it because there's always sort of a certain rift is I feel like a too big of a word, but just
Mm,
maybe just a tension
mm,
sometimes between band and
in
production.
production. Mm-hmm.
And I know in my experiences that also has an ebb and flow. I think it also
Mm,
depends on where you are, the environment that you're
mm,
in, excuse me.
yeah.
Um, can you speak on that sort of tension and
Yeah.
like in some places that you've seen it really well, and then how to maybe get it there if
Mm,
we're experiencing some major tensions between the band and production. Um, because then if you are experiencing that major tension, there's not going to be that relationship. There's not going to be that um, linking arms and going
mm,
into the church service together and
mm.
just putting on an amazing um, worship
Service.
service. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say and I've seen it happen many times, traveling and singing at conferences and things like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm happy to say that the bands that I've traveled with, we have tended to have very, very beautiful, close, good friendships with our production team. Like we're
Cool.
going out to eat afterwards if we're traveling, we're going together.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've seen bands come in and just have a very rough relationship with the production, treating them, almost as if they were servants, or like, you guys
Mm.
are here to serve me. And production people, rightly so, don't tend to like that treatment.
No,
Now, I've
no, of
seen
course
people
not.
go above and beyond. Yeah, right. Because I wouldn't like it either. Like,
Yeah.
nobody deserves that kind of treatment, especially when your production people had a 2 a.m. load in. And
Hmm.
they've been there
Yeah.
for all the hours, and you just walked in with your, really off-brand but super epically expensive coffee, and you've been sleeping at the hotel with that beachfront whatever. They don't
Uh-huh.
want to hear that trash. It's very rude, and it does cause problems. Your sound checks can go longer. It just
Mm.
makes everything more frustrating. And then you're not, if we're talking about a worship experience
Hmm.
and you've got all this tension,
Yeah.
how do you approach a healthy, God honoring service with that kind of treatment? If
Yeah.
you've got this
Yeah.
tension, you're coming into it with this negative, whatever. Not that we
Hmm.
can't go to God with negativity. I mean, gosh, I do it every day. But like, the
Sure.
hope is that you're approaching it with a pure heart, saying, God, what if I'm leading somebody? What do
Hmm.
you want from me with these people? How can I serve you? How can I serve these people? So if you
Mm.
have all of this tension, man, it's just, we're missing the point. I mean, if we can't
Hmm.
love the people around us, then what's this really about? Is this
Right.
about numbers of adoring fans, which is why sometimes I'm uncomfortable using the word audience,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
congregation feels real Baptist of me, growing up as a pastor's kid, but I
Yes.
don't know what the right word is. I definitely don't want it to be spectators.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I feel the same way. I'm like, because non-denominational whatever,
Right.
like North Point,
Right.
it's not it is a congregation, but we don't refer to them
Right.
as
But we wouldn't say
congregation.
that. It could be attendees, whatever.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
is, our relationship with our production people sh- does, in my opinion, reflect a lot about us and our posture coming
Hmm.
in. Now, we
Hmm.
approach worship services, all of us, probably for lots of reasons. I need this job. I like what I do. I
Hmm.
like the people I'm working with. I
Sure.
want to honor and serve God. I am not asserting in any way that those things are bad things,
Hmm.
but the heart, I think, of it is that we're doing ministry and we should be here to serve other people. And if we're treating
Hmm.
the people that are helping us along the way like trash, then I'm really just wondering, what's the posture of our heart there? And is that honoring
Hmm.
to God? And obviously the answer is no,
Hmm.
and on the flip side, I've worked with some production people that no matter how nice everybody in the band was, they were just in a
Sure.
bad mood and being rude as crap, and just
Right.
like wouldn't give us the changes we asked for. And it was just like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Like, I understand that these tensions can come from both sides,
Yeah.
but I think if you make it a point to be overly gracious and grateful with the people you're working with, that goes a very
Hmm.
long way. So this a practice that I have is like, I don't ever want to leave sound check without thanking the person who
Hmm.
did my mix, or going up to
Hmm.
them after I come off stage and saying, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. My mix sounds great. Now, if my mix
Yeah.
doesn't sound great, maybe I have a couple tweaks, and then it's, hey, thank you so much. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's always, thank you so much for what you did. I could not have done what I just did if you had not been in my corner.
Hmm.
It's like somebody in a wrestling ring and then the guy behind him. Like, I feel like it's
Yeah.
like, we did this together. You
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Absolutely.
that's how
Yeah.
it should be.
Yeah. Well, and I would say the inverse to that, in my experience, is that when a worship leader or a musician on stage is just off stage, not a very nice or person,
Yeah.
it very much reflects my ability to engage with what they're doing on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I started noticing that when I was in college, because
Mm.
I went to the Christian university, and there's any number of the guys in the quad playing the acoustic guitar.
Yep.
And then you see them in class and they're just like complete jerks.
Yes.
And then, at chapel or whatever, they're on stage leading worship, and you're just like,
And they seem like they're
get
trying to
out
come
of.
across as yeah,
Yes.
they're like,
I'm
oh,
just
I'm so
like,
sincere. And you're like, no,
mm-mm,
you're not. You're not
mm-mm.
sincere.
Yeah.
You are a complete tool bag.
And that's me seeing it. And so I know that, other people in the school or other people in the congregation have also experienced that. So now you're
Right.
affecting all of those people's ability to engage in the worship service.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, yeah, it's tough. And
It's
you guys,
discouraging.
worship leaders, it's a very hard job, and so is
And so is
playing.
production. And so
Yeah, but yeah, yes.
I might assert that production has some things about it that may be more difficult, though that's not to demean my craft, because it does take a lot to do what we do, but we're all working a craft here. And that's what I think is
Yes,
important to realize,
absolutely.
is that it's all a craft. Some are
Hmm.
going to be on the stage, but it's just like I think what we're seeing in the film industry right now. There are people who are working on set hours and hours and hours getting barely any recognition for all of the work that
Hmm.
they put in.
Hmm.
And this movie could not happen without it. And
Yeah.
we're just starting to finally come up and say, hey, it's not just the people on camera who are making this
Hmm.
film. In fact, it is largely and
Yeah.
mostly in part to the production people who are setting up the lighting, who are tweaking the
Hmm.
sound, who are constantly committed to getting the right shots.
Yeah.
I feel that a live production is the same. We all are doing this job. Some of
Hmm.
us will be the face of it. Some of us will be the brain of it. Some of us will be the heart of it.
Hmm.
And I think that we have to approach it as a wholehearted process, or we lose, I think, some of our long-term influence with the congregation
Oh,
or the attendee,
yeah,
whatever. And to your
absolutely.
point, they
Yes.
see through it, and that's not
Hmm.
why they're here.
Yeah.
We're here to engage with God. So
Right. Yeah.
like let's keep the heart of it what it is.
That's fantastic. I love that. I'm trying to think of other.
I was gonna say, I know I talk a lot, Aaron. So if you're like,
No,
okay, this episode is
you're
wildly long
good.
enough, like you can cut me off
No, no.
whenever.
I'm just trying to think of like other things that we would talk about,
Sure. Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
like worship leading and how that intersects in um
In production.
the production world or
Yeah.
just the service programming world
Yeah.
that we're both intimately involved in.
Mm.
I know you've spent a few months up at one of the campuses in like sort of music director role.
Hmm.
How has that played into your view on worship leading? Or is that the first time, or are you have you done that before?
Mm.
And how has that affected your view on worship leading and how you speak to worship leaders, knowing that you're planning the worship set and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I was contracting in that music director role with Brownsbridge for a short period. And while I was doing it, I was helping craft the worship sets and such. And that was
Hmm.
not the first time that I've done that, but it's one of the first times that I've had to go and give feedback to my friends. Now, I would say
Mm.
I'm a high communicator. I care a lot about emotionally intelligent communication. I want to
Yeah.
be effective. And I also want to speak to somebody in a moment where they're able to receive it. And so,
Hmm.
you know, being on the other side of that in the SPD side of it, I was definitely more aware of how challenging some of these conversations can be. Because if I'm standing at the front of house and I'm
Hmm.
watching, I'm like, yeah, that feedback from the SPD director or whoever, it makes a lot of sense. Whereas if I was standing on stage, I might have felt differently about it. And now I'm thinking, I got to go
Mm.
bridge that gap. And I understand how difficult feedback can be. And it
Yeah.
helps me to feel more open to the people giving me feedback, because I understand it's not an easy task to tell somebody, hey, maybe not like this, or I could
Hmm.
tell your heart was really in it, but it really just did not translate at all. I mean, that's
You're
challenging.
trying, but
You're trying, but you're
nothing.
just not doing it. That's painful to have to tell somebody.
Yeah.
But it was helpful information for me,
Okay.
and um yeah, I would say that feedback was very useful for me. And it's just another layer of realizing we all really are doing our best to do our best. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes I would hear feedback, not just at Brownsbridge. I've done this at other campuses in different arenas
Okay.
as well. But you might hear some feedback that you think, I don't know that I agree with that. And then finding a way to communicate with the worship leader the heart of what they're trying to say without having to say all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's the challenge that everyone is trying to figure out, I think, when you're bridging the gap between production and worship leading.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's challenging, it's tough.
Sure.
And
What's
sometimes even when your heart is pure, it doesn't come out right and
Yeah,
it's
no,
offensive and it hurts
that's
people's
very true.
feelings. And you gotta,
Very true.
that's just once again why you have to cultivate a relationship with these people. It
Right. The
cannot
real,
just be,
yeah.
a lot of people will criticize North Point and say it's just a pay to play. You just show up, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
That's not really true. It is true from a paycheck perspective. Yes, I'm a contracted employee when I'm
Hmm.
showing up at
Right.
North Point, But what's not true is that we don't get to know each other. Most of us are contracted regularly at these campuses,
Yeah.
month in and month out, 6 months at a time. So we are getting time to get to know each other, and we should get to know each other, because the more I know you, Aaron, when you give me feedback, because Aaron sometimes will run lyrics, or he's in charge of people running lyrics. Sometimes
Yeah.
Aaron will come to me and say, XYZ, sorry, this wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. And I know that Aaron cares about my experience with being able to see those lyrics. So
Yeah.
if I'm having trouble with something, or if I need help, I feel absolutely safe to go up to Aaron and say, hey, Aaron, when this song gets to the bridge, could you guys come up a little quicker, or,
Yeah.
whatever. I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
I've ever said that to you, but like I would
No,
feel
but
perfectly safe to say that to you if I
yeah.
needed to, because I know
Right.
you, and I know that I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm in
Mm-mm.
need, and I'm asking you to
Right.
help me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Well, and
yeah,
that's there for, is
right.
for your confidence. That's
Right.
why it's called the confidence monitor.
That's right.
Um, in crafting and being the worship, or not the worship leader, music director, um, what can you give us some insight in what goes behind picking this song over that
Mm,
song?
yeah.
Why are we singing, you know, Jesus paid it all for the 10,000th time,
Yes.
or
Right.
whatever?
Or what? Yeah.
Um,
That's a great question. So much of it will have to do with the church or the church campus that you're at, and how the lead pastor wants to filter worship sets. So at North Point,
Filter, what do you mean filter?
we've had a model where we go from wide to small as the
Right.
service progresses. We
Hmm.
start out with something that really anybody could engage with, whether they've been in church since they were 2 days old, or whether
Hmm.
this is the first time they've ever walked in and they're 47 years old. We want something that everybody can engage with. So
Hmm.
if I'm crafting a worship set, I'm thinking song number one probably doesn't need to be, Oceans from Hillsong, or, something that's going to
Right, right,
like
right.
take me to a quote unquote deeper place, or require a
Hmm.
lot from me. I'll say it like that. Something that's not going to
Okay.
require as much from me right off
Hmm.
the bat. I need
Okay.
time, just like anybody listening to a well curated playlist, to get into the
Mm.
vibe of it, and we're trying to get
Oh.
hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, oftentimes thousands
Hmm.
of people, to a similar place when their demographic is completely different, their ages are different,
Sure.
their, culture, age, whatever, jobs, all of these things may be different. And we have to try to find a way to open up that funnel and say, everybody get in here. Everybody
Hmm.
get in here. Now,
Yeah.
not everybody has to have the same response or experience with the song, but when
Okay.
we're crafting worship sets, and again, the lead pastor or the SPD team, they're going to have a big say in kind of what this feels like at your campus. That's been
Mm.
my experience. But we're crafting something that fits that. And then we're getting narrower and narrower as we go
Mm.
in. That does not
Hmm.
necessarily mean, and this is a pet peeve of mine, it does not necessarily, let me take it away. It does
Hmm.
not necessarily mean that the songs have to get slower and sadder. It
Hmm.
just means that the content, in my opinion,
Hmm.
needs to get more focused and specific as we go in.
Hmm.
Maybe this day we're talking about loss at church. So maybe I'm going to
Mm.
craft some songs that talk about God's understanding of pain, or sharing in suffering
Mm.
with Christ, or
Okay.
even something about how much God loves us, to remind us that he is good and he loves us and he never leaves us. If I know what the subject is, that's what I'm crafting the set towards. Some people will want you to craft your sets months in advance, and that's totally fine. It's helpful for production. But what I'm
Hmm.
always going to do is revisit a week
Hmm.
or two ahead of
Yeah.
time and say, these songs don't match. We're not doing any of this.
Sure. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What's funny is that there were some weeks where we didn't have a lot of time. We were not going to have time for a rehearsal, and we had certain key production people who maybe there was a medical emergency and they were gone, or were
Mm.
on vacation. And so I've been asked before, we need to do a set list that we have literally done before, like all these songs, so that we can
Oh,
kind
okay.
of, from a production standpoint, copy and paste what we have, because we're missing key people that
Yeah.
this is going to be with the volunteers that we have and where they are in their training level. Because sometimes you got seasoned volunteers who know what they're doing, and sometimes you got
Sometimes you
brand
don't.
new babies that you're
Sure.
training up. And so
Yeah.
the feedback was, where we're at with our volunteers in production, we need a copy and paste situation for this week only. Very rarely does that happen. And again, this
Yeah.
was a campus specific, but we've done that before. And that's an example of working together with production on something that I didn't necessarily like the choices that we came up with, but it was to serve the whole purpose, the whole team, not just the musicians who just didn't want to do that song for the 8 millionth time.
Right.
Because we don't like it either. But so that as a whole, production, volunteers, band members can all cohesively work together and be successful.
Yeah.
A lot of times the reason we're repeating a song is because when you're trying to get thousands of people to learn a song, and most of them statistically, the most recent stats that I've heard, and certainly they could be different, is that they're attending once, maybe twice a month.
Yeah,
So
if that.
if that. And so if I am doing, maybe we've done this same tune a million times, The Battle Belongs, Phil Wickham. We do that a lot at Brownsbridge. We've done that a lot. So you, Aaron, come on the first Sunday of the month, and then you don't come back again for another month. Well, if you come back and all the songs are different, and then the next time you come, all the songs are different, you've never had an experience where you came in the door and knew any of the songs we were singing. True. Unless you listen to Christian radio, which many people don't. And so some of the reason that we repeat so much is so that if you come in, you may not know 2 of the 3 songs, but you knew one of them. And so you had a moment where you could engage more fully because you were familiar with it. And that's the hope there.
Yeah. Talk about how much is singability a factor?
So this is an
like Oceans or what's the Billions song?
Oh yeah, I know. I was thinking So Will I. So Will I.
So
oh my word. Don't ever ask me to sing that song. Way too many words. I cannot be up here doing this song. Oh my gosh.
Is that a big thing, singability? Yeah. Or does that also depend on what we're trying to do in the service?
It's a big thing for most SPD teams. And this is a place where I tend to have friction and tension because I tend to think there's so much more singability to songs than other people do. And I defer to the people who aren't singers. I'll say that. I will ask people who have no experience with music, like, when we're singing this, is this confusing? But I have a little bit of a rub to this because you know what pop singers and classic rock singers and all them are not asking? I hope this is this singable for my fans? But how many fans get out here and sing Queen songs with 8,000 harmonies to them, and they're singing it just right. So I kind of give a little bit of pushback on that because I'm like, if the people like the song, they'll learn it and they'll sing it. Is it a good song? That's the question I'm asking. Is the melody engaging? Not is it singable, but not everybody feels that way. And most SPD directors do not agree with me on that. And that's okay with me.
Now, is there a difference between singability in singability of the lyrics and then singability in the melody?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I definitely focus more on melody. Just, I grew up in band, not choir. So I grew up in melody. And so like if it's a great melody, like I can get into it way faster than if it's like, oh, these are super easy lyrics. If they're super easy lyrics, I'm usually like, did they not try hard?
Right. Like, what happened in that writing room?
What are you guys doing? But I didn't know if there was a difference between those two.
There definitely is, because to your point, So Will I think that song is beautiful melodically, like absolutely. From a big picture standpoint, it's a beautiful song. Yes. There are so many stinking words in that song. I hate singing it. I mean, the word hate may be too strong, but probably not. I mean,
and I hate running the lyrics for it.
It's trash. It's not like, the song. Oof. Excuse me. Just to be clear, the song is not trash. Having to try to figure out what's next feels like trash. Like I can't do it. My brain won't do it. So yes, I believe there is absolutely a difference between singability to a lyric and singability to a melody. And there have been occasions where there is a melody that is incredibly challenging, even though I really like it. I will admit that there are times where that's true. I just personally don't feel like it's true as often as I have been told it's true. But I also grew up in a household of musicians. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't know. But
since we're on the sort of subject of worship or crafting a worship set, how do you respond to like the emotional manipulation sort of argument in like a worship set or even just a church service? I know that that's a topic now with Well, I mean, maybe it's always been sort of a topic, but just like, oh, the music is meant to emotionally manipulate you. And while I think all music is supposed to do that,
Right. That's what I
but
think about it.
yeah.
I'm like, you mean all
Okay.
music?
There you go. Yeah, I was gonna say all music, but then bringing it into the church
Yeah.
and just the people's feelings around that manipulation already.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll say this. I don't think all music is intended to be manipulative. So,
mm,
I was joking earlier when I say that. Yes, in
right.
some ways I do believe all music is meant to make you feel something. I don't believe all
Mm,
music is obviously meant to manipulate you. I
hmm
think music can be used as a weapon, even though it's supposed to be a tool. But I don't think that engaging our emotions with the truth is bad. I think when the scriptures talk
That's
about
good.
worshiping in spirit and in truth,
Hmm
that's important. God gave us music as a gift. When we're grieving, what kind of music do we listen to? Most of us
mm
need sad music. Why? It elicits an emotional response that we don't know necessarily how to get out of us without it. I mean, the Greeks were doing this way back in the day when they were naming the phrase catharsis. You would go
mm
to a show and the hope of the show, why they had all these tragedies and all these big moments, were that members of the audience could come and see this thing happening and have an emotional catharsis, an experience where they say,
hmm
me too. And in doing
mm
that, they unlock something that was imprisoning them. And so I believe music is God's gift to help us process hard emotions, good moments, joy. It's an expression of
Yeah.
joy. It's why we dance at weddings. It's why we, get up and love to dance. It's it's meant for all those things. And I think if it's applied properly, or appropriately is probably a better word, with
mm
truth, it's not manipulation. Now, I know what some people are talking about.
mm
Oh, the keys player is playing and they're doing a giving moment and
Right.
they're just trying to whatever.
Right.
Well, okay, sure, that has happened. I've also seen people manipulate for that outside of the church. That's not just a church,
Sure.
a dirty
Yeah.
church. I'll say that. That's not just a dirty church tactic. That's
Mm,
just a tactic that people use. And if people in a church are using it for that, shame on them. That's not,
mm,
in my belief, what music is for. But if somebody's asking me if I believe that it's wrong for music and emotion to help them connect with the idea that God loves them, or
mm,
the idea that they're worth something, or the idea that they can be forgiven no matter what they've done, great. Like, that's
mm.
wonderful. That's a miracle. I love that music can help people hear from God, just like reading the scripture helps us hear from
Sure.
God, or talking to somebody who's saying, me too, can help us hear from God. It's a tool. It can be used as a
Mm,
weapon. It shouldn't be. It can. But
yeah.
I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure.
If I'm not worshiping in spirit and in truth, if my emotions not engaged, I'm disappointed. But I'm not going to fabricate. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to
Okay.
try to make that up. And there's temptation sometimes to do that, but
Mm,
that's from a leadership perspective. Sometimes you feel like,
yeah.
well, I can't just be standing out here deadpan in the face while we're singing, whatever. But how do I approach
Mm,
the song authentically from where I am today? That's the question I'm always asking God and myself. If I'm on
mm,
stage and I'm singing something I really am not feeling, then
hmm
that's just the conversation I'm having with God the whole time. God, you
Interesting.
know that I hate this song and I
Yeah.
want to honor you right now and I want to lead your people. So can you help me figure out where I'm landing? And that's usually where I come in for me, to a place of what I would consider authentic leadership, even with something that I don't
Mm,
necessarily care for.
mm. That's really cool because I think there's aspects in production too that are like that too. Like I mean, like you're loading out, after a show, and it's like I don't want to be here,
Right.
but it's like, well, why am I doing it?
Mm.
And in
Yes.
the church world, I know I have to constantly remind myself, like, I don't want to, X, Y, and Z,
Right.
for the thousandth time. But it's like,
Yes.
no, that's it's
The
what
reason I'm
it's
doing
what we
it
do,
is
right?
this. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Or in
Yeah.
whatever situation you're in, it's just like refocusing yourself on this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Mm.
I don't have to like it
Right.
necessarily. I
Right.
don't I don't think God tells us that we have to like it, but we are to do the work to honor God.
That's right. That's right. And if you really
I
feel
don't
that
know. That might be
chronically,
very unbiblical. I'm not a
I don't
theologian.
think so. I think that if you're in an experience, I think there's a discipline to everything good in life. You
Mm.
know, I don't think that there's anything good in life that does not require a little bit of a grind to it. You know, as a
Mm.
worship leader, I
That's
sometimes
good.
have sang the same stinking song so
Mm.
many times. And there are just times where there have been seasons in my worship leading quote unquote career. I don't know why I put the quotes there. I think it just sometimes feels a little weird to tell people I'm a worship leader as a career. But yeah, there have been times in my worship leading career where every Sunday I wake up and the first thing I say is, thank you, God, for my job.
Mm.
You and I both know I don't want to go do this, but thank
Mm.
you that I get to do this and that I'm getting paid to do it. It's not because
Yeah.
I don't enjoy worship. It may just be that I've sang that song a million times or
Yeah.
I was weary. I don't know anybody that does anything in life that does not have a weariness to it. And that's why I believe God asks us to renew our mind, to
Mm.
cultivate this sense of joy. It's like tending a garden. You got to get out there and cultivate. And there are
Mm-hmm.
seasons where you're planting seeds, seasons where things are growing and
Yeah.
it's not quite there yet, and seasons where you're thriving. And I'm not going to say I'm not supposed to be a worship leader or I'm disqualified because there's a grind that I don't like all the time. I don't like
Mm. That's
exercising all
good.
the time. I don't have to like, I'm a personal trainer and I tell my clients all the time, I don't care if you like this.
Right.
You don't have to like it to belong here. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you
That's
can
good.
try to cultivate a healthy mindset with it, but some of this sucks and that's okay. Like it's not all glam
Yeah.
and that's okay. God didn't say to me, pretend you like all the discipline in this world. The scriptures say no discipline is enjoyed at its time,
Mm-mm.
but it produces a healthy crop.
Right.
That's it. So there are
Yeah.
disciplines to our job. It is what it is.
How have you been able to sort of renew your mind, 52 weeks, 52 Sundays in a year for 13 years.
Mm,
Um, I don't think I've quite been 13 years in church production. Close, close though.
yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure you're
Um,
close.
yeah, how have you found the best way to do that?
You know, for me and my personality and the way that I experience life and such, I will tend to repeat certain things to myself. For example, in those seasons of dry, I'll wake up and say, thank you, God. This is a gift. I didn't
Okay.
have this at one time in my life and I desperately wanted it. I'm going to
Mm,
remember that right now. Part of that cultivation is calling to mind when I didn't have what I now have and saying, do I still want that? Was this still a worthy cause? And
mm,
9 times out of 10, the answer for me is yes. And I think, wow, imagine if I was still sitting there waiting for this. And if I could see future
mm.
Abigail being like, this sucks, whatever, I would slap her in the face.
Yeah.
And I don't shame myself. That's not what I mean. I just
Okay.
remind myself. It's a way of cultivating gratitude. And other times, the way that I renew my mind is by taking a little break from certain things. Maybe I say
Okay.
no to a couple of things that, I have the margin to. That's not always possible, but that's just been my experience
Right.
as a contract
Right.
worker, that there might be certain seasons where I'm going to take a break from this or from that. But for the most part, it's been going to God and just being honest about it. God, I'm not
Mm,
a big fan of this right now. I think you called me to do this.
mm.
What's the next step here? I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I think it's a proverb that says that with my God, I can scale a wall. So if I feel like I'm coming up to this big wall and there's no path, I'm
Hmm.
looking up and I'm like, well, where's the rope? How are you going to help me scale this wall? Because I can't
Yeah.
turn around. I'm not going back,
Hmm.
but also I don't know how to keep going forward. And God always makes a way. He
Hmm.
always refreshes. He always renews, but sometimes it's costly and sometimes it just takes time.
Mm.
But to me, being honest with God about it, talking to other healthy people about it, especially people who are farther down the road in what I'm doing or who are
Yeah.
shoulder to shoulder with me and saying, do
Absolutely.
you feel this? What are you guys up to?
Hmm.
I steal a
Yeah.
lot of tactics from other people.
That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, and I think you know, reminding yourself of God's faithfulness, that's something my wife and I have been talking about a lot
Mm,
lately.
mm,
And for me it's very helpful.
yeah.
And well, and just fun to think about that kind of stuff. Because
Mm,
you're like, that's really cool. Like, you're X
this is
amount of
real.
you're X amount of years away from that thing, and you can look
Mm,
back and be like, dang,
yes.
I didn't do anything. My wife
Literally.
didn't do
I could
anything.
not have made this
Like
happen.
those things happened, and it was not by anything that I did or didn't do.
Right.
It was God's protection or
Provision or whatever.
provision. There we go.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And it's just like, wow. But you don't get those moments unless you take the time to look back.
That's right. It is a
Um,
discipline. It's not going to come naturally for most people
mm,
to sit there and remember.
mhm,
And that is one of the reasons I believe the scriptures tell us to remember so often in the
mhm,
Old Testament and the New Testament.
mhm,
In the Old Testament, you see a lot of people making physical monuments of things. This big thing happened. We're going to
true.
build a monument. Why? To remember
Mhm,
that God did this thing.
right.
We don't really do stuff like that in our culture. We
Not
might
really.
journal or whatever, but we kind of
Mhm,
like journal, close the book, move on.
mhm,
And so I really believe that, God had to instruct us all the time, remember, remember. And I
mhm,
think that remembering, and you said that, that you remembering is a part of the renewal. That if you
mhm,
don't remember what God's done and you don't call to mind the ways or the times that he's come through for you, it can be easy to take for granted. And we all will, what he's
mhm,
given to us. I,
mhm.
I am not going to sit here and say I don't take for granted the gifts God has given me. I absolutely do.
Yeah.
And the only thing that stops me from doing that is going to God and saying, can you help me see? It's like David,
Mhm.
search me and know me, God. What's offensive down here? Surely a lot. Walk me
Right.
through it
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
help me.
and I think that and one something else that's super, it's not always intuitive to people, is that because you've remembered God's faithfulness and provision, why would you think that he's not going to continue?
Right.
But that, I mean, but that's the
But
unknown,
we
and
all come up against it.
we're not any good at trusting in the unknown and what's going to happen next.
Mm.
But you have to. I mean,
You
like,
have, but right.
like,
Right. That's right.
well, I mean, you don't have to. You have a
Yeah.
choice.
You don't have to,
You don't have
but
to.
it would be helpful in your walk with the Lord if you
Sure.
would do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and same thing with worship leading or in production, like knowing that, you know, the Sunday's over and we're going to keep moving on.
Yeah.
God will continue to provide. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to roll these cables for this period, and then all the cables are going to be rolled, and
Right.
we're done.
And then we're
And
going to move
then
on.
next week I'll have to roll cables again, but
That's right.
it's fine. It's whatever. But
That's fine. It's
yeah,
whatever. It's just a task we hate. It's
yeah.
fine.
Actually, I kind of like rolling cables.
Oh, good. It's a
But
little
yeah,
simple task that keeps you
just
grounded.
I guess, yeah. Mic
I
cables,
love it.
really. Nothing bigger than that.
That makes
Um,
sense.
this has been great, Abigail. Thank you so much for stopping by, and
Yeah.
such a pleasure. And good luck with everything moving forward. It's
Thank you,
great
Aaron.
having
Thank
you.
you so much for having me. It was a gift and a joy. And thank you for doing this. I think that this conversation between all things church production and all the facets of it is very important, and it's helpful. We all
Mm-hmm.
feel these tensions and stuff. We don't all
Mm-hmm.
know what to do. And so to hear other people say, oh, raise my hand, me too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
very, very valuable. So I appreciate you doing that. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate that so much.
absolutely. Thank you.